Hey, everybody, welcome back to the podcast. You're listening to the longest running superhero role playing game on Earth. I'm your host, the Game Master, and today we're talking about the Scarlet Witch and her many variants. But before we get into that, smash that like button, make sure you're subscribed, and leave us a comment. That helps us out with the YouTube algorithm, but also we love to hear from you guys. We have an awesome community here, and that's thanks to you. So thank you so much for being here. So, all that said, let's dive in. The prologue to today's story takes place in the early 2000s when John Redbridge had been corrupted by the Loc-Nar, the embodiment of all chaos, evil, and magic in the Earth K universe. He had gone to the Middle East and taken over, and eventually he conquered the Earth. The Red Queen in our game world is the name that Wanda Maximoff usually goes by. In her first appearance, we learned that the Scarlet Witch moniker was actually a slur used by superstitious European villagers who were far too ignorant to understand what mutants were. So our Wanda hates that name. Anyways, so Red Queen got her name because Wanda was once a member of the Hellfire Club. Her father, Magneto, was the Gray King for a while, just like he was in actual Marvel continuity. Anyways, getting back to our own continuity, Wanda was a member of the Avengers in the 1970s. After Darkseid killed the original Thor, Richard Nixon ordered one of many John Redbridge variants to assume the identity of a new Thor named Roger Red Norvell, aka Red Thor. He became a member of the Avengers in the 70s, serving alongside Wanda and eventually marrying her. Around 9/11, when Imperiex caused the Our Worlds at War event, a bunch of the variants of John Redbridge all merged together to defeat Imperiex. And it was that amalgamated Redbridge that then conquered the Earth. And even though Wanda could rule as an actual queen, she did not want to. Her gypsy upbringing meant that she liked things that were earthy. When she and her version of Red were first married in the 1970s, she decorated her home with things like wood paneling and the soft glow of lamplight, things that today people might see as kitschy or tacky. But if you really think about it, those design elements from the 1970s were heavily influenced by the hippie sensibilities of the 1960s, which in turn were very much in line with the whole gypsy thing, which is why that 1970s aesthetic is such a good fit for our take on Wanda. And the 70s wasn't just when she was first married, it was when she started to have kids like Tommy and Billy. So to Wanda, the 1970s felt like home and family. And if you are familiar with her backstory, she yearns for those things. And too often they've been taken away from her in one way, shape, or form. So she wasn't into this new kingdom that her husband made. So she unmade it. She put things back the way they used to be. She undid what the Loc-Nar did, and then she separated the Redbridge back into separate variants so that each woman in the emperor's quote unquote harem could once again have her own husband. And our Wanda has a good heart, but she does not like change. Which brings us to the main plot of this game session. In summer of 2025, the Shaper of Worlds changed the world, or if you really think about it, he destroyed the old world, Wanda's world, and from its ashes, a new empire was forming. And once again, a Redbridge variant was in charge. This time it was King Arthur. And now the Loc-Nar has been destroyed. So this time it's not about corruption. It's just Arthur finally being the once and future king that we've been teasing for years. But it's still change. And Wanda hates change. So one day she undoes it. She changes everything back to the way it was before. All of the old government buildings that were destroyed are back again. Everything that Brainiac's nanites assimilated is undone. And Wanda seems pretty happy with herself. But here's the thing. Not too awful long ago, the Negaverse invaded Earth K, and their queen was a Wanda variant referred to as the Emerald Enchantress, or her nickname is the Green Queen. During that fight, the heroes exposed her to a villain named Mr. Splits. His superpower is that if he makes contact with you, you split into two visually identical characters. One who is lawful good and another who is chaotic evil. And both new characters are half as strong as the originals. That's us following how the split power works in DC Heroes. And by the way, we did the exact same thing when A.I.M cloned the Avengers. And Wanda's clone wore a yellow costume and she went by the name Golden Witch, which, by the way, is an idea that we ripped off from Marvel Action Avengers issue number 10. And she too got hit by Mr. Splits. Anyways, when all was said and done, there was a Wanda for every color of the rainbow. The red one was, of course, the normal Scarlet Witch. And when she was exposed to Mr. Splits, it created an evil twin who wore purple, and she was called Magenta Mage. The yellow one that was Golden Witch had a heroic doppelganger now who was called Amber Alchemist. She wore orange. The green one that was the Emerald Enchantress now had a good counterpart who wore blue, and she was Sapphire Sorceress, so on and so forth. And both the Amber Alchemist and Sapphire Sorceress recently used an Atlantean device known as Trinity to get their powers back up to where they were before. It's also worth mentioning that when these new Wanda variants came into being, they wanted their own names to help differentiate themselves and establish them as unique individuals. So Amber Alchemist adopted the the alter ego of Amber Maximoff. And like Wanda, Amber also hates change. So when Wanda changed the world back, Amber switched it back to Arthur's high-tech kingdom again. Neither woman realizing that they were playing a cosmic tug of war with their own variant. And that was a problem for John Redbridge because he has an advantage from GURPS supers called Temporal Inertia. So every time Wanda or one of her variants starts flipping the light switch on reality, the previous John Redbridge remains. In the past, we saw this when we ran our Age of Apocalypse game. Somebody went back in time and eliminated Professor X, creating a new timeline where Apocalypse ruled. Not only did the previous John Redbridge still exist, but during his many adventures in that world, he encountered his variant who was a native to that timeline. And when they undid that timeline by getting their hands on a time machine and going back in time to save the life of Charles Xavier, they created a third timeline. It was very close to the first, with a few minor differences, like whether the gate on a picket fence squeaked or had been repaired. At any rate, nonetheless, those Age of Apocalypse adventures by themselves left us with three Redbridges. That said, this Wanda War is creating Redbridges left and right. And as they start to pile up, Team Redbridge works together to get to the bottom of things using the computer in their expansive headquarters, which keeps changing with every reality wave. They track down the many Wandas, including the three evil ones. And so while in the Negaverse, the Redbridges find that the Emerald Enchantress is the wife of their evil counterpart, right? Who rules the negative version of Earth K, right? And the negative versions of Reed Richards and Tony Stark recently invented Stargate technology. So now their evil empire is spreading through their antimatter universe like locusts, consuming resources and leaving ruined worlds in their wake. And while that's horrible, it's not the matter at hand right now, right? They need to know why their world keeps flip flopping. They do use a Mr. Splits that they captured. They have him do his thing to the green one, creating a lawful good version of the Green Queen. Questioning her is how they learned so much about what's been going on in the Negaverse. But they decide to put a pin in that right now. And rather than start a dimensional war, they come home now with the good green one, hoping that she can help use her power to stabilize things. Likewise, they do the same with the yellow one at an A.I.M laboratory that they raid. A good version of that yellow one then happily tells them everything that she knows and everything A.I.M has been up to, and they move on, right? And the purple one is the same way, where it's basically another dead end. And they are left with the realization that it's not one of the evil Wandas that was doing this. So, meanwhile, in New York City at Four Freedoms Plaza, things keep flip flopping. So, both Reed Richards, the first, and his look-alike grandson, who is Reed Richards the second, are using their computer equipment to try to get to the bottom of things. As they do, poor Ben Grimm keeps flickering between his lumpy, rocky, and spiky forms, yelling for the eggheads to stop these crazy reality waves. And now there are a ton of Herbie robots, not for the same reason, though, that there are so many John Redbridges, but because Herbie placed his mind in a central mainframe and is more like a Herbie network now that is operating multiple bodies all at the same time. They are all helping the Reeds. Also, Sue Storm's new husband, Jack, was one of those Redbridge variants. So he too is suffering from temporal inertia issues. That points the two Reeds in the right direction, and they build a gadget with the detect power, which then helps them find where each Wanda is at. Reed the first takes the Fantasticar to where Amber Alchemist is. And when she pleads her case, Reed says he agrees with her. And the new kingdom of Arthur is more high tech, and he thinks it's superior in every way, and he prefers progress. But Reed the Second and Sue Storm fly to where the original Wanda is. Sue takes them there in an invisible jet that she creates with her force manipulation power. And her grandson, Reed the Second, guides her using his tracking gadget. And when they get there, the Fantastic Family talks to Wanda. Sue relates to Wanda for several reasons, one of which being that Sue also raised a family in decades past, and Sue still prefers to live in the Baxter Building over Four Freedoms Plaza, which in our game are two separate buildings. The Baxter Building still has retro 1960s decor, while Reed the First built Four Freedoms Plaza years later, and it's way more high tech, but it has no soul. It doesn't feel like home. It's like living inside of a computer. Wanda lights up and agrees with Sue, and she says that's exactly how she felt when Brainiac's technology was used to assimilate the Earth. Anyways, during this very long conversation, a disturbing fact is revealed, which is that Wanda wanting things to be like they used to be had an effect on the younger generation. And that is why Reed II looks exactly like his grandfather, has exactly the same powers as his grandfather, and is even rather cold and distant like his grandfather. Reed II asks Wanda if she even permits him to have free will. The other Wandas are choosing other names so that they can be individuals. But he says that Wanda is a hypocrite because he didn't get his own name or his own face. And on Wanda's end, she had no idea. Thanks to Sue's husband, Jack, who are now many Jacks, they contact the army of Redbridges that the Wanda War caused to exist. And all of them show up on the scene using a green lantern ring that one of them used to create a glowing green jet. They tell Wanda that she may have meant well, but she's created a lot of problems. Wanda sobs and says she didn't mean to. They hug her and they say they know. And Reed II comes up with a solution using that big brain of his. So they all pile into a new flying saucer that the Green Lantern makes with his ring, and they fly to Counter Earth, which, like Earth, is one astronomical unit away from the sun. But unlike Earth, Counter Earth is on the exact opposite side. And just like we saw in the Guardians of the Galaxy movie, Counter Earth looks like it's still the 1970s. Everything on Counter Earth has that kitsch aesthetic. Wanda says if she moved here, she would miss her home. So Green Lantern offers to just use green lasers to laser cut along the edge of the property line and then pick up her old house in like a giant glowing green hand, put it in a bubble and bring it to this world. Wanda says she'd miss her old town, though. And Reed II is quick to point out that maybe her neighbors like their new high-tech homes and that it is wrong of Wanda to force her preferences on others. And of course, when Reed says that, he is upset about everything she has done to him, restricting his ability to do things differently than his grandfather did. Wanda is brokenhearted for that and nods, agreeing that while she will miss her town, it would be wrong of her to bring the whole thing here with her, forcing her whole town to just be her security blanket. And so the heroes work together to help Wanda move. They find the counterpart of her house here and swap them out. The Jacks are upset that they don't all have their own Sue. So one of the Redbridges gets Dawn Allen to bring them one of Mirror Master's mirror guns, which Sue then uses on herself. You know, we've described that before, where it's a copy and paste thing, right? That you point it at the target and you hit copy, you point it into just an empty space and you press paste and it makes a copy of, whatever, obviously whatever it copied. So Sue jokes that there's plenty of her to go around. And while that solves some problems, a lot of other problems still remain. Which brings us to the epilogue. The high-tech bar door at the Continuum Bar and Grill can connect to any other bar door anywhere in all of time and space. So the Redbridge Army goes to the CB&G. It's been a long, weird day, and they all agree that a drink is in order. And the bartender here is the first of their kind. Before anyone time traveled and reset the timeline. So he is very sympathetic to their problems and tells them to stay after hours. So they do. And for the first time ever in our game, we see him set the bar door into a secondary mode that nobody else knows exists. He explains that in this secondary mode, the bar door will only work for him or his variants. So using the bar door, the army of Redbridges leaves what the bartender refers to as the center of the universe. And they travel outside of the universe to a secret place outside of reality. They are now outside of time and space. But where they go is a story for another day. We enjoyed playing this one. We hope you enjoyed hearing about it. If so, smash like, make sure you're subscribed, and leave a comment. From all of us here at the longest running superhero role-playing game on Earth, we hope you have a good one, and we'll see you in the next adventure. Bye.